Today is June 29th, 1993. We're in the home of Viola and Ed Larson in Logan, and we're going to talk about the family of Walter and Edith Cooley. I'm Annette Cooley Handy, a granddaughter, and I'd like to introduce their 5 children. First of all, we have Uncle Leroy, Walter Leroy Cooley. He's the oldest of the 5 children. Mama says smile.
I nodded at her.
Okay. Okay. Next, we have Rita Cooley Cantwell. She is the 3rd child in the family. Next is Viola Cooley Larson. She's the 2nd child, the 1st daughter. Next is Lyle Rigby Cooley, 2nd son, the 4th child. And last is the baby of the family, Sarah Ann Edgell. Sarah Ann Cooley Edgell. Okay, let's start back there with, where are you going there? With Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's start with Aunt Sarah.
Oh, great.
Okay, Aunt Sarah, do you have some memories of Grandpa and Grandma or your home life that you'd like to tell us about from when you were young?
Well, I don't remember too much when I was too young. I don't know why I don't remember when I'm young, but I don't. The first thing I remember is when Leroy took me out to the barn and taught me all these little poems. At one time I could recite 12 verses of Mary Had a Little Lamb. And then I remember my dad rocked me to sleep all the time, and my friends used to say, "Sarah's daddy rocks her to sleep." And they'd say, "Well, she's the baby."
What time at night did you go to bed?
Well, as soon as it got dark, I had to go up and turn the lights on for Lyle, because he was afraid of the dark. I always had to go up and turn the lights on for him so he could go to bed. I don't remember what time. But I wanted to tell you about the first thing, one of the things I remember about Mother. She taught me to sweep the floor. She didn't like the way I swept the floor, so she took me and the broom, and we swept the floor. I can't remember anything else too much.
Was your mother a pretty stern taskmaster as far as work? Did you do a lot of work around the house?
No, I was kind of favored, I think. I don't think I did much.
You didn't do much.
But Rita used to try to get me to do everything, but I was a little stubborn. I wouldn't do it.
Did you work outside on the farm as well? Did you do chores outside?
Oh, we used to tromp a little hay once in a while, and we fed the chickens, didn't we, Lyle?
I believe that's right.
Yeah, we used to feed the chickens. But I don't think I did much work. I think I was the baby, and I didn't get to do too much.
And Rita's shaking her head vigorously. Let's go over to Rita. Tell us about Sarah as a child. You seem to be quite strongly opinionated about how she did her work.
Well, I don't remember much about that, but I remember when we first moved over from the Will Jensen home, that I nearly ran my legs off chasing Sarah, because she was going back over there to live, and she wanted to go over and see Emma Nielsen.
And I don't even remember the house over there. I don't know why.
What
I
was
was
the
going back.
Will Jensen home, that's where we lived when we first came from Bancroft.
And this was Merlin Anderson's home?
The
Okay,
Merlin Anderson home.
and that was called the Will Jensen
Yeah.
home.
But I used to chase her back and forth, and she'd get halfway over, and I'd have to bring her back.
How old would Sarah have been?
Well, would you be about a year? 2
Oh,
years?
I don't know. I can remember. So
It must have been a little older than that.
About 2 years or
and
so.
I remember Aunt Emma had that crippled leg and shoe that her foot turned over. And I just loved her. But I don't remember the house. I only remember Aunt Emma.
Oh, I remember the house, the Will Jensen home, really well, because I thought it was such an elegant place. We had the library, then we had the parlor, then we had the dining room and the kitchen. And I remember these cousins from Salt Lake that came to visit. One of them was Verona. Was it Verona or Veronica? Verona Walker. And two other cousins, a Price lady and another, and I don't remember their names, but they came to visit, and I was so thrilled. I thought they were just like movie stars. They were so elegant with their high heels and their decorated hats, and they came in the front door, and I remember thinking how beautiful they were.
How long did you live in that home before you moved? After you came back from Bangkok in 1920?
I think I'm 8 years older than Sarah, and she was about 2, so we must have moved over then I was about 10. And
I think I was 12, if I can have figured it out.
And I came from Bancroft when I was 4.
If you were 12, then it would have been about in 1924.
About then.
So that was about when
Well,
I
Sarah was born in 24.
I was born in Newton, wasn't
Yeah.
Yeah, you were born in
And so was Lyle.
Everyone was born
So
in
it was
Newton.
1925.
Probably 1925 then that you moved to the other house. Was that house, the first house you lived in, nicer than the one you moved to?
I don't know that it was nicer. I just remember when we moved to the other house, it was just like, I think everybody else. We had the calcium in the walls. Then we dipped the sponge in. The walls was pink. Then we dipped the sponge into the blue and go like this all over the walls. And that was what we had to do in those days.
I remember that.
Imitation wallpaper.
Yes. And
Oh.
I remember at the time after, well, just about when I was married, a little after, that Mother made the remark she felt real bad to even put wallpaper on the walls and new carpet on the floors because I'd always wanted it so bad, and all we had was calcium on it.
Let's move to Viola. You're the oldest daughter. Did you have more responsibilities? Did you do more of the housework and the farm work?
Oh, naturally, I had more responsibility. The main thing that I remember as a child was that Mother always went out to help Dad milk. I think she thoroughly enjoyed it. She liked to go out and help Dad milk. She would get up in the morning and put everything out on the counter that I was supposed to put together and make pancakes. And then she'd call me, and I'd get up and beat the eggs and put in the sour cream. They were always sour cream, and the flour with the soda in it, and make the pancakes, and then I would cook them on the griddle and have them ready when they came in for milking cows. That was one of the things that seemed to be my job.
Didn't I help?
About how old would you have been when you were doing that?
Well, from 12 to 14 or 15.
And you did that before you went to school every morning?
Yes.
And you had pancakes every
Well,
morning?
oh my, no. But this was just certain days. But that's one of the things I do remember.
You remember fixing breakfast
Yes.
for the family?
No, on school days, we pretty much had got up and had just some cereal or something quite quick because we met the bus real early
The bus going to
North Cache.
Okay, let's move over to Uncle Leroy. I know that as the oldest child, you probably had a lot of responsibilities at home. What kind of work did you do for the family?
It seemed like I was the go-between everybody. Seemed like I remember up at Bancroft, I was errand boy for Mother, going back and forth to the cellar that Dad had fixed, feeding a chicken, helping with the chores all the way around like that. When as I got a little older after we moved to Newton, I helped. Then I was large enough that I helped do the milking, helping Dad with on the farm, with thinning sugar beets and digging potatoes, whatever was there. And I remember when we lived at the Will Jensen place, we had a little small barn that was there, and we had hay in the barn. I like to tell this because I remember Dad always liked to joke. He always liked to have fun. But it was my job to get up in the top of the barn and throw the hay down through it, through just a little opening about 3 or 4 feet square. Then Dad was to push the hay around to all the cows. and I pushed one forkful down, and then I went to push the next one down. It wouldn't go. And I pushed, and I pushed, and that hay wouldn't go down. Pretty soon, the hay went down, and Dad was standing there. He says, "You'll learn to push hay down on my head next time." So, like that, and it seemed like there was always something to do. We was always busy.
Did you do a lot of work then, or did that take most of your day when you weren't in school? Did you do a lot of chores and helping around?
Yes. I was old enough to drive the horses on the implements on the farm. I remember several times taking Lyle with me, and he'd sit on the horse backwards so he could watch me walk behind the harrow. And it just seemed like things like that all day long. It never was. Seemed to be too much time for play.
All of you helped then, both inside and out?
Right.
Did Grandma require the boys to do work inside the house too?
Yes. I had, many of the time I had to do help with the dusting and cleaning the room. I always remember Mother, after I'd cleaned the dining room up, we had a door that swung open and locked it, so there was a little hole in behind it. And we'd clean up the house, and the first thing Mother would do when she came in after I was to inspect the job, she'd open that door and look behind that and see what I threw behind the door. Then she'd get down on her hands and knees and look under the dresser, under everything, to see there was no dirt that I'd missed underneath way back at all. They could hardly reach.
That door that had the hook on that you hooked open was a swinging door.
Right.
And so they had a regular screen door hook to hold it in the open position, so we didn't have to swing through it.
Which house was that in?
That was in the Will Jensen home.
Yes, that was.
Did that have indoor plumbing in that house?
Yes.
I remember in that house that when we all had the flu and had beds, can you remember that, Leroy? When we had beds clear across the front room and Dad come and doctored each one of us with our castor oil. And we had orange juice to take the flavor out of our mouth. And to this day, I think of castor oil every time I drink orange juice.
Oh, I had peaches.
Maybe it was peaches.
No,
But
it was
I don't like
orange
them
juice.
either.
It was orange juice.
You don't like orange juice either?
Well, I have a little taste of castor oil with it sometimes. Fond memory.
Well, when Uncle Leroy was saying that he helped around the house, you were kind of shaking your head. By the time that you and Sarah were ones at home, you didn't have as many chores to do inside the house?
I didn't do much work around the house.
Not inside.
Not much work around inside. I must have been the boss outside, I don't know, because I didn't do much work inside.
About how old were you when you would start helping outside? What kind of jobs did you do outside?
I learned to milk pretty early. I learned to milk cows pretty early in my life. We had cows, and I remember more milking with Mother than I do milking with Dad by far. I think Dad did more, maybe went out to irrigate, do other things, and I'd milk with Mother even more than Dad, it seemed like to me. At least I remember that.
I remember it that way.
And I remember I had plenty of chores to do, always. I don't ever remember having a licking in my life.
That's what I was going to say.
None of us did.
We didn't need one.
Not one of us.
I don't believe I ever remember having a licking in my life. That is a physical one. I had many verbal lickings. A number of verbal lickings.
That was Dad's way.
Dad
Didn't believe in the stick. I don't suppose he had any children he had to use the stick on. I don't know, but if he'd just say, "Well, that's okay. I can do the job for you that you're supposed to do," that was worse to me than if he'd have given me a licking, you know. And I remember that about Dad.
I remember Mother used to use a little bit of a slap every
I'd
once
see
in
her
a
go
while.
like this.
I think Mother you might have a little slap somewhere along the way, but I particularly remember an occasion, we always had a bull We always had a bull around the place. And it seemed like to me we kept them too long and they got kind of mean.
Right.
Like, those bulls got kind of mean, and I remember, and I don't know how old I'd have been, but I would assume I was about 9 or 10. And anyway, I don't know who brought the word that the bull had knocked down the fence. And he was standing, could come out if he'd wanted to, but he hadn't come out yet of the pen. And I remember Mother and I really making a plan. We went clear down around Laura Johnson's place. Mother and I, we slipped down around the road down to Laura Johnson's, and I remember Mother and I down on our hands and knees picking grass. We'd picked some fresh grass up, and we slipped around on the south side of that bullpen and kind of teased that bull to come from the up on the north end back to eat that green grass. And while he was back there eating the green grass, Mother and I slipped around the other way and got an old pole and put up there across the front of that bullpen. I can remember Mother and I really, it was that big plan we had. I can still remember that.
Well, was this the same time that I was ironing in the front room and the bull come up, looked through the front room window?
I don't know at this time the
That
bull
it was
didn't get
coming,
out.
looked right through the front room window.
I can also remember something, and I know this is hallucination with me, but I remember I was almost afraid to go into the bathroom at night, Sarah.
I know, yes.
Now, it's true, Sarah had to take me up to bed. I acknowledge that, but I've got over that. But anyway, she'd have to take me up to bed at night or turn the lights on for me to go to bed. But I could go into that bathroom and look back over my eye at that window right there, and I could see that bull's face in that window.
Probably was there.
Now, I know that's crazy, but that I can still remember that as a kid. But you didn't go in the bathroom with me, did you?
I don't remember.
You just turn on the light and shut the door for you.
But let me tell you about that light upstairs. We had a step and it went up to one landing, to another, up to another landing, to another landing. I was so little, I couldn't reach the light switch. I had to go up all the stairs, go up around, crawl down through the banister to turn the light on.
In the dark.
In the dark, because he didn't dare go up.
Well, talking about that upstairs, I don't like to make out like Leroy's mean or anything like that. He wouldn't be that way, but I went to sleep down on Mother's bed. There was company there or something, and she came over and she said, hurry and get up to bed now, Rita. So she woke me up and stood me on my feet, and I went up those winding stairs. Well, my room was this way, and instead of going in my room, I went in the clothes closet. And I was in there for 20 minutes clawing those walls, trying to find the bed, and I couldn't find the bed, and I couldn't find my way out. Finally, I went out of the closet, and I got turned around, and I went to the east instead of to the west. I went down there, and Leroy was in his bed, and he heard this noise and commotion, somebody clawing in the closet, coming down there. When I got in there, he was up on his bed with his shoe just like this. And he finally saw who it was, so he didn't hit me. It come pretty close, I'll tell you.
How did you get along as children in the family? Was there very much fighting among the children or teasing?
Not much.Rita'd just take me down and sit on me all the time.
Well, I had that job to do, and so I just took care of it.
She took me down and sit on me half the time.
We'd start wrestling in the parlor and wrestle all the way into the kitchen.
And then Sarah and I was about even Steven. It was about an even fight with us.
I was tough.
She was tough, I'll tell you. And I went to 3 years of high school before I weighed 100 pounds. So I wasn't a very big heavyweight.
Well, Leroy and I grew up more together, and I think we were just real good friends as far as I can remember. But you see, we lived all alone. Leroy took me everywhere he went because he didn't have anybody else.
This is up in Bancroft?
In Bancroft.
There weren't a lot of neighbors
yes,
nearby.
and we were quite distant from neighbors. we used to go out, and I remember we had such a pretty cat. And then at that time there were so many rodents in the fields that they put poison out, and our poor cat ate some of the poison mice and died. Isn't that right, Leroy?
That's right.
I have to find out from Leroy if I'm telling things right. Sometimes I'm not sure I remember it because I was quite young at that time.
You hadn't better remember on me too much, because I might have forgotten.
Well, another thing I do like to tell is how important Leroy was in my schooling. I don't know whether I was just a little bit dumb or what was the matter, but when I went to the first grade, I could not learn to read. And Leroy was so disgusted with me because I couldn't read. But we finally decided it was because when his teacher taught him how to read by using phonics and mine didn't. And so Leroy took it upon himself, or maybe Mother urged him a little, and he taught me how to read using phonics. And I did learn to read, and I've been a bookworm all my life. That's how I spent my childhood. I think that's the reason I can't remember incidents of playing or having a lot of fun, because I always was sitting in the corner with a book.
We learned the letters with the cornflake letters, didn't we, on
Yes,
the packages?
on packages of cereal.
The letters are up in the packages of cereal?
The printed
We'd
letters on
even
the
cut them out and place them around to help her with that.
Learned to spell. But he was a good teacher.
And you said you did quite a bit together as children, and even I think even as teenagers, you kind of hung around in the same group and went to dances. And
Yes, we were more the same because of Leroy's year or two of sickness that he had to stay out of school with his rheumatics, made us coming along in school quite near together. We graduated the same year from North Cache.
so you were in the same classes at
That's
school,
right.
and that made you even closer.
We didn't have too much time to play when it was the Bancroft, did we? 'Cause all we had to do was take care of Rita, keep her from crying. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Rita crybaby?
Well, he says I was. Leroy said I was a crybaby, but I thought I was quite nice.
Oh, I know Lyle was.
Lyle was a crybaby?
Oh, my gosh.
I carried him on my hip for 2 or 3 years.
Well, I know that Viola used to think that I didn't do much. She thought I was kind of lazy. And I remember we had our work to do, and I always had to take the ashes out, you know. And so I'd take the ashes out, and I thought I'd dusted and cleaned the whole house. It was perfect. And when Mother came in to inspect it, she went over and the dust was ashes and settled all over the desk. So she wrote on there, "Rita is a dirty pig." That's what I got. Viola always thought I didn't do all that I should. She thought I was kind of lazy.
Did you ever write that for your children in the desk?
No, I don't think so.
We did, didn't we?
When we divided up our work, Rita'd say, "But that, you got the easiest."
I had the ashes to take out.
And
you know.
then I'd say, "All right, you do what I was supposed to do, and I'll do what you were going to do."
Oh,
No, I don't want to do that.
sounds like I was kind of an ignorant kid.
And she made me do all the dusting. And I wanted to mop the floors like she did. I had to do all the dusting. And I still don't like to dust. I make John do it.
What did you do to play?
Can't remember.
We played
well, we played
cat and dog.
Marjorie Johnson and I climbed in the barn from daylight till dark.
And
I
Rita
told-
Johnson, and they made mud pies and decorated them with these seeds that you gather out of the weeds, you know. And even we tried eating them sometimes. It wasn't too good, though.
Did the neighborhood children play, games, or did you have some,
Well, Marjorie was my neighbor.
not with big groups, just one or two
Yeah,
friends?
usually. We used to giggle and giggle and giggle and drive Mother crazy. She'd say, "Quit your cackling."
One more word out of you and you'll have to go home. And then Marjorie would get the giggles and she'd go on high.
Marjorie had a voice that was a little hard to take.
It was raspy.
Well, I remember an experience with Hawker and me. That was Howard Johnson. But we was out in the Krell once playing, and one of Johnson's chickens, well, again, there was a number of chickens out there, but we was trying our marksmanship with rocks. And I remember we threw a rock and hit that chicken, and down it went. Boy, it scared us so bad that we hurried and dug a hole and buried that thing, and it's haunted me ever since, because I don't believe that chicken was really dead. I think it was just knocked out, and I think I've often worried about that, because I think we buried that chicken alive, really. But we got rid of it.
Did you have bicycles? Did you ride horses? Swimming?
Oh, I rode the derrick horse.
We all did that.
Tell me what it means to ride the derrick horse.
We got on the horse and pulled the hay up into the barn. The horse pulled the hay up into the barn, but we had to make it go.
Okay.
You remember when the horse stepped on my toe? I think that was the only time I ever heard my dad get angry. And he stepped on my foot and wouldn't get off. And he jumped down off of that, either the stack or the hay rack, and just really lit into that horse. And I've never seen him mad, only just that one time. But that horse got on my foot and wouldn't get off.
We had an experience with the derrick horse. Once I was riding the derrick horse, and Al Panson, a neighbor, was working for Dad, and he was quite a rough character. And sometimes the language he used just was not a bit nice. He cursed a lot, and as I was riding the horse, I couldn't control it quite the way he thought I should, and he lit in on me. Alf Hansen cursed at me quite a bit, and my dad was angry at him. He really told him off. You remember that, don't you, Leroy?
Yes.
You had experienced something like that, didn't you?
You're saying about seeing Dad angry. Didn't any of you remember when we used to milk the cows out in the yard at the Clark place? We didn't tie them up. We just go out and sit down by them,
Yes,
milk the cows without locking them up. Well, didn't any of you ever remember having Dad chasing some of the cows because they didn't stand? He'd take a little club in one hand and his milk bucket in the other, and he could outrun any cow he had. Dad was a fast runner. He'd get up in the corner there, get up in the corner. Now, so, and the cow, and after a minute or two, that cow would stand right there, quiet, and then he'd sit down and milk. I saw Dad got angry that way several times.
Well, that's the way he did with us. All he had to do was speak to us, and we minded.
Yeah.
He had something in his voice that was...
How did your mother discipline you?
My mother yelled a lot. You know, when you get yelled at, you get used to it and ignore it. But when Dad got in there, then we knew that we had the mind.
Well, there's one thing that I remember distinctly. I don't think we ever sit down and eat a meal without the whole family there. I remember Mother used to, she'd say, well, if you're too hungry, you'll have to take a cracker and wait. But Dad's still out in the field, or Dad's still out there, and we'd wait, but we'd all sit down at the table together.
Every meal, or?
It seemed like every meal. It seemed like in the morning for breakfast we'd wait while they commenced milking. That's one thing I remember. And I remember once about Lyle, when he was half grown up out in the hole he was, but we was sitting to the table eating. We had green peas. And Lyle didn't like them, so he just got up from the table and went in the front room. And there wasn't one word said, but Dad went in the front room, took hold of Lyle's arm, and brought him back sitting at the table. Not one word was said about anything. Dad never did that, but we knew we minded. But we respected him for it.
The 80s peas?
I did, but it was half made with ketchup. I put enough I just doctored them up with ketchup enough that it was ketchup and peas, not just straight peas. I could not stand green peas. They was as hard on me as peanut butter was on Wilma.
And then I remember we'd have this on Saturday nights, we'd toast the bread that was left, and we'd heat the milk, and we'd have this hot milk over the bread. And that's the way we took care of the bread that was left.
That was bread and milk to me.
Yeah, but it was hot milk.
With salt and pepper.
And we put so much salt and pepper on it, and Dad didn't like milk. So Dad would go down there and slice onions on his. That's the way he eat his.
On the bread and milk?
Yeah. He'd put onions on it to get it down.
I still love toast with hot milk and salt and pepper on it.
Do you like bread and milk just take
No. I couldn't swallow it.
Has to be toast.
gotta be
Well,
toasted
and it can't be plain milk.
It's not bread and milk.
milk toast.
Milk toast.
And another thing I always remember so well is we'd come in the house. You could depend on it. When you'd come in the front door on Monday after you'd come from school, you'd smell homemade soap from the washing and the beans on a ham hock and fresh baked bread. And we knew that just as sure as Monday come that that's what it was going to be when we come through the front
And
door.
the blankets hung up in the wintertime, hung all around the stove to get them dry.
Yeah.
And they smelled good too.
Yeah.
Tell me about the holidays. What do you remember of Christmas?
Oh, let me tell you about Christmas. It nearly killed us because Mother wouldn't let us even near the Christmas tree till Dad came in from milking.
On Christmas morning?
And we had to come down the stairs and come through that swinging door into the kitchen and wait till Dad got in from the milking because he had to be there.
What kind of a Christmas did you have? What would be for your Christmas? Did Santa Claus come?
I remember clothes.
It was mostly clothes, but it seems to me that there was always some little special thing that was a surprise.
I
It
think I
might
got
not-
more than the rest of you.
I
I
think
think
you
so.
did too.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll never forget how thrilled I was when I got a fountain pen and pencil set as my Christmas. I was thrilled with it. And it was a small little pen, and it just really pleased me.
Well, I remember one Christmas in particular. I had seen this beautiful doll in the paper with beautiful, lot of hair, and I wanted it so bad, so I told Mother that's what I wanted for Christmas. So when I got up Christmas morning, there was a baby doll without me hair, you know, and I think Mother had got it with a subscription to the paper or something. And I mean, I'm not faulting Mother. I know she'd done the very best she could do, but it just broke my heart. And I remember I went upstairs and cried and cried and cried, and I felt so bad about that doll. But when I come back down, we had the iron box, like when an iron comes in. We'd each one have our little separate things set around the table. And I remember having a paint set and a pair of gloves in this iron box, and that's about what you got. But, you know, that's all we expected. That's what everybody had. We didn't expect a lot.
Did you exchange presents at Christmas?
I don't remember too much of that.
How were birthdays celebrated in your home?
Well, they were big.
Always our aunts and uncles came. Uncle Ama and Uncle Rule. I remember Uncle Rule coming to about my 8th birthday real well. And that most of Mother's brothers and sisters came for our birthdays.
We had big birthday parties, I remember. And I don't remember too much about presents, but I remember that big long table.
I think
Uncle dinner?
Uncle Rule always gave me $1.
I don't remember.
Did the cousins come, or two?
Well, it seemed like it was more the aunts and uncles that
The aunts
came.
and
I think so. But then as the years went on and there were more children in the family, then we got together more as families and the children playing outside. I remember more about being up to Aunt Percy's house. That seemed to be where we went and had a lot of fun. All of the cousins out playing.
Aunt Percy's cake. Wasn't that good, Lyle? She made yellow cake
By
and
the
put
yard.
that chocolate frosting on it. You go up there in the bottom of that cupboard, and that's where she kept it.
Did you visit her by
I like the
yourself?
raspberry jam on
Yeah.
that fresh bread just as good.
And we'd go to Aunt Percy's in an afternoon, maybe just Mother and us kids that were free, probably not the boys. And we'd go up there, and Aunt Percy would give us 50 cents. run up to Will Barker's and get a can of maple leaf red salmon. It was always maple leaf red salmon. We'd open that salmon and each one had a salmon sandwich. That was an unexpected party, you know, just something she wasn't prepared for.
Did you have much to do with Grandpa's brothers and sisters?
Not as much, it didn't seem like.
They weren't close.
Well, they were
Aunt
Inez.
Aunt
We
Martha.
used to have more to do with Aunt Inez when I was younger.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
But
And
she
Martha.
had Harold and Helen and the ones near our
Lavelle.
age.
Aunt Frances lived in Newton.
Yes. I spent a lot of time at their home because Afton and I were the same age. And when Uncle Sam got hurt and got his leg hurt so badly when he worked on the railroad, Aunt Frances would go to Salt Lake and stay with him while he was in the hospital in Salt Lake. And I would go up and stay with Afton to take care of her brothers and sisters. And so I spent a lot of nights at their home.
Well, we had a lot to do with Aunt Frances and Uncle Sam because they were Rigby's too. So we associated, I think, more with them with the Rigby
We were
family.
double cousins.
Yeah, we were double cousins.
Well, I wouldn't want to let it go the fact that I wasn't a good fighter, because these two girls licked me all the time. I remember an occasion that Neil Benson and I were friends and good playmates, and I think we'd had a little trouble over a marble game. I kind of believe it was the taw. I think we had played bumps for the taw, and I think I'd won, and he didn't like that. He chased me home all the way. And I thought, boy, I just got home. I just opened the door and walked in the house. I thought, well, I've made it. And Dad was sitting there, I'll never forget. And he said, what's the matter with you? He said, looked out of the window and he kicked me back outside and said, settle your problems, boy. Well, Neil and I had a 15-round bout. And after a good couple of bloody noses, he went up the street. He said, I'll have my dad come and get you. So I was a better fighter than it indicated, you know.
Well, was he bigger than you?
Oh, no, we was about the same.
He was little too.
Yeah, we were both about the same size.
Well, tell me what you remember about your mother. What were her talents? What were her interests? What did she do? Remember quilting right from when you were very young?
Sewing, all kind.
She was a boss.
But
A manager.
She was a manager.
very organized in every way.
She could take a group of women and you do this and that, and she'd have everybody doing something.
I remember distinctly when she was in the Relief Society, I can still see the stacks of diapers that she'd hemmed and fixed for some lady that was going to have a baby. Or how they'd go and clean people's houses when they need it. Mother was a doer. And I remember when she was in the Relief Society, how Dad pulled this trick on her this one time. It was quite clever. He came home and told her that Sister Rolfe had met him up there and said that they needed to have this meeting down to Grandma's place, Mother's place, because the General Board, the State Relief Society Presidency, was coming to visit. And Sister Rolfe couldn't do it. She was in the post office and she was busy, and would Mother take over? So of course Mother just went wild. We cleaned that house from top to bottom. And I don't remember the deal, but there was a few ladies there. There was Archie Barker and Ella Benson and Hildora Peterson and a few like that, sitting around there, and all of a sudden the car drove in and we said, oh, here they are, and we was all just sitting like this, waiting for the State Relief Society presidency to get there. When the front door opened and they came in, it was Dad and Einer and Marinas and Emery Benson all dressed up in ladies' clothes. And they said, we're here for the meeting. Well, I don't know which one of us wanted to put Dad down. We was all smothered. We'd worked so hard for days. And there they were, all dressed up. They'd come to have a meeting. I think Mother was going to faint on the floor.
Was that very common for your father to tease
I thought
people?
Dad was very much that way. I'll never forget him in this play, Grandpa's Twin Sister, that they put on in the church house, their recreation hall. And Dad come in there, and he was, I guess he took the part of the two parts, the man and the woman, but he came in there and he played the piano. He was dressed like a lady, had a gray wig on, and he played that piano. You couldn't believe how he played the piano. So when we got home, we said, Dad, will you play that for us on the organ, our old organ? No, he didn't want to. He didn't want to. It went on and on. Finally, we found out Hortense Christensen was behind the scenes playing the piano, and Dad was just mimicking it, you know. And then that was the day that Uncle Rule, he was the big smart, I don't know what he was, I guess a banker. And he went over and offered Dad the cigar, and he had the cigar in his mouth, and he offered the cigar to Dad. Of course, Dad took the cigar, and he looked at one end, he looked at the other end, and he chewed off the wrong end, and put the wrong end in his mouth. Well, Uncle Rule just about come apart at the seams. He turned around, he went to the back of that stage, and he laughed. He did everything under the sun to get control. It struck him so funny. But finally he came back, and they went on with the show.
Dad loved that kind of thing.
He
just loved to have entertainment for people. Remember when he fixed up for Halloween in our house in the West Clark place?
Yes.
And had all the Peters and everybody come down and go through the front door and crawl through down through the cellar and out through the basement window.
And had this rice, cooked rice in the wash bowl in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Everybody had to go in and take a ticket when they put their hand in that cold rice.
I remember once he pulled a joke on me on my birthday that way. He had a party for me, and it was a surprise. And he never let me know one thing about it at all. And when it got time for the people to come in, he just come over and said to me, "Take this lantern and run out the barn." He said, "I wondered if I left that lantern on out inside the barn." So I was just playing and unsuspecting about it, thinking I went out there, and I come back in, opened the door, and they about floored me with a surprise party. So that nobody was, Dad just giggled and laughed. He just, remember how hard he laughed when he laughed?
Yeah.
He got that surprise on to me without, knowing anything about it.
Well, the thing that I think back about the folks and that, I guess they had their arguments and their quarrels and their this and their that. But the thing I remember was I think that Mother taught us all to respect Dad. It was like Dad was on a pedestal. We respected him. We looked up to him. We honored him in every way. And Mother was responsible for this. She was that kind of a person. And I remember lots of times, I remember how we'd all sit in the front room there together, and the kids would be doing our lessons around the table, and I'd be trying to get this stupid geometry, and I couldn't get it through my head. Dad would be asleep with the newspaper up like this. Mother would be darning the socks in the big chair. Finally she'd say, Walt, hurry up and wake up and help this kid with her geometry so she can get to bed tonight. So Dad would get up and he'd take the book. He said, I've got to have 5 minutes or so to review it a little to see what you're doing. So he'd read down one page and part of the other, and then he'd help me with the geometry, and then I could go to bed. So we'd go in the kitchen, in the oven, get her hot rock, wrap it in a towel, and up the stairs we'd go to bed with our hot rock.
You had a hot rock to put in bed? No heating upstairs?
It was 40 below zero up there, I think.
Well, I think Mother learned to respect Dad when they were first married. The things that they had to get along with, and the way that Dad had to improvise for everything, she learned to respect him. But she was determined, they were both determined. I remember an incident up in the house in Bancroft. Some gentleman, I can't remember the man, his name. I can see him, but I can't remember his name. He was talking with Dad in the front, in what was our bedroom and front room together, and they were talking about the fact that somebody had got mad, that some lady had got mad and poured water on her husband's head. And Dad was sitting there, and I remember Dad saying, well, I'll tell you, they'd never better do that with me. You'd never get away with that. And in a few minutes here comes somebody slipping in right through the pitcher of water. Mother poured it over Dad's head. Well, boy, and she tore for the kitchen. She didn't get the door shut, and Dad went out there. And they had a little squabble out there, and Dad poured water all over Mother. And in a minute or two, they both come out, their arms around each other. But they were both a little determined. But Mother respected Dad. She always run for Dad. Anything went wrong. When I cut my throat on the bottle, she just picked me up and run out through the fields to find Dad with me bleeding. But she had to have Dad. But even though they were both determined, but I think they dissolved their troubles, and they got along pretty good that way.
Well, in the way that Dad always was so good to take when Grandma Rigby died. See, I don't hardly remember Grandma. She died when I was about 3. And her father had already died, and they were left without a father or mother. And I remember how good, or I've been told, I don't really remember it, that Dad always had some of the Rigby children up there living with him, Uncle Aim and Aunt Lou and Uncle Ray. And he was so good to help with Uncle Ray, and he needed to be helped because he wasn't right well. And how good Dad was to take these in and help them no matter. The house was always big enough for everybody. And I remember how good he was that way, to help everybody.
What kind of involvement did your parents have with the church? Did they hold? You mentioned Grandma being in the Relief Society.
Yes, Dad was in the bishopric. That's the thing I remember so well when we was down to the Will Jansen home and Dad was in the bishopric. The thing that stayed with me longer than anything is how we'd all be ready and go to church, and Dad just have us sitting there on that bench 30 minutes early. And we was always there on time, I'll tell you, we weren't late. And we'd come home and the table would be set. It was fast day usually. The table would be set, and I remember the chairs turned around with the backs to the table, and we'd always kneel down around that table and have family prayer, and I remember that so well, how that stayed with me through the years. And I remember how proud we all was when Dad was in the bishopric and Mother was in the Relief Society, and they'd have to go a lot to these funerals, and I'd tend Lyle and Sarah. And all the entertainment we had was the old Sonora phonograph, but we'd play records, All My Father and Come Ye Saints, No Promise Me. And we thought we had the world by the tail just to sit and listen to that phonograph like that. And then another thing I remember, but I know I'm talking too much. Another thing I remember is all of us in the kitchen on Sunday morning getting ready for church. And the dishes was done before we went. Mother would be in the dishpan doing the dishes, and us kids would always be wiping the dishes. And Dad would be through the door in the bathroom getting ready. He'd be shaving, and remember how we'd sing. Can't you remember that? We'd all sing, and I think back about that. Dad coming in with his beautiful tenor voice from the bathroom, and it was really a thrilling thing that I remember.
Well, Mother sang everything she did.
Yeah.
We did a lot of singing in our
I
house.
was wondering when Lyle was telling about milking the cows, did she sing while she milked the
You
cows?
bet.
She did.
You could hear her all over the block.
What kind of songs did she sing?
Usually church songs.
Hymns?
Yeah, hymns. Uh-huh.
I can remember that getting ready for church the day before, because I was about the last one through that tin tub.
Yes.
Huh?
We all had to take our turn in the tin tub. We never changed the water, did we?
No, I was the
Leroy
last
got
one
in
in it.
first, then, and Viola, and then me. And Lyle, and Sarah.
I think Sarah got in ahead of me. I think I was the last one in that tin.
I probably bawled.
I think you did. But I was the last one in that tin tub.
We dipped the water out of that reservoir, that hot water out of the reservoir into the tub right by the stove, and that's the way we'd have our Saturday night bath.
Each person could have an extra little hot water when they got
you get
in.
it touched up just a little.
I was going to say, well, Dad just talked about his positions that he held. Dad was a natural leader. When he went to Bancroft, it was only a matter of just a few weeks, even though that he lived on the farm to start with, that he was manager of the baseball team up in Bancroft. Inside of no time, he was president of the young men. And when he moved down here, it was in no time at all till he was manager of the Newton basketball team, and then the bishopric.
leader.
He was just a natural leader.
He was leader of the youth. I remember how he got out of the bishopric, I think, to take over the scouts because they were badly in need of good leaders. And I remember how much him and Mother did for the scouting program. They'd take the kids on the bus and they'd go to Yellowstone and they'd go all over and Mother would cook for them and everything. I remember how Dad made such an effort with these scouts to get them all to be Eagle Scouts, and how he'd gone with some of the boys who couldn't afford the uniforms. He'd gone to the bank and signed with them to get their uniforms so that they could all go. And I think the entire group, I think he brought the Scouts back from what was quite a, not very active group, and he got them back in there and
He
really
left the
were.
bishopric to do that.
Yeah, well, Dad had a knack with the youth. He really did. They respected Dad a lot.
During this past week, I've listened and recorded to Dad's and Mother's funerals. And it just really thrilled you to hear the comments that were made by the speakers. Every speaker, it seemed like every one of them had experience with Dad and Mother. They always included Mother in the scouting program. Bishop Murray Rigby was one of the speakers, and Bishop Max Christiansen was the other that had, both of them told so many experiences of Mother and Dad in their scouting.
I remember Val Benson was one of Dad's scouts, and I remember when Dad died, we went to see Val to see if he'd say a few words. Do you remember that, Leroy?
Sure do.
And I've never seen anyone cry like that. He just broke down and absolutely sobbed. He said, "You don't know how bad I'd like to do that, but I can't." But he wanted to do it. But he's told me a story or two since. He said he remembers coming to our place to pass off his cooking merit badge. And he brought his stuff, that he cooked all up to bring for Dad to look at it, And Dad took that and he took it and tossed it over there, and he said, "If Pee-wee will eat it, it's good." And he'd throw it over at Pee-wee. If Pee-wee would eat it, he said, "That's good stuff." And Pee-wee was the one that would check to see if the dog, that he'd feed it to Pee-wee, and if Pee-wee would eat it, that passed.
Yeah, many a time. It seemed like Dad was an early riser. He'd come upstairs to wake me up, and while he was up there, he'd look out of the window in the morning. If you see anybody else had a light, the next morning he'd call me 30 minutes earlier. He wanted to be the first one. But nothing, it seemed like he wouldn't wait for anything. But I could always milk the cows while Dad was up passing somebody was cooking and trying to see if Pee-wee could eat it.
Well, I'll tell you, Mother was an early riser, too. I remember if you weren't out of bed by 6:30 or 7, she'd pull the sheets up and under you to go wash them.
I remember an experience that upstairs door, that went upstairs, the door right next to it was the cellar. You remember there's two doors right there together? You went upstairs in one,
That's right.
and the other was the cellar. Well, Harold Parsons was living with us. He come and stayed with us quite a lot, and worked for us. And I don't know if Harold had been drinking the ale or what he'd been doing when he come home that night, but instead of opening the upstairs door to go upstairs to bed, he opened the cellar door and he took a step up like this, and before he caught that going down, he rolled clear to the bottom.
I don't remember that.
He talked about that every time he came to visit us until shortly before he died. He always talked about that cellar door.
Yeah.
We had that other door, I remember one into the kitchen. It opened and swung out into the dining room or the living room. Well, Uncle Abe, remember, came to visit us that one time. He come in at night, went on in the dark, and was fidgeting along to find his way across the room to get in the kitchen. And he bumped his nose on the door. The door was open, and he bumped his nose. And the next morning he said, "Edith," says, "that's the first time I ever knew my nose was longer than my arm."
Well, was that door that swung there. You could swing that open and go in behind the stove in the kitchen, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was that door that I'd slip into and get behind the stove when Aunt May come. Because Aunt May was such a kissing old sister, huh? She always wanted to kiss everybody, and that seemed to be against my religion. And I know I'd slip in, like, go in that door and slip in behind that stove.
You'd hide there when Uncle Les come too, so you wouldn't have to milk the horses. Can you remember when Aunt May came up? We'd all been sick with the flu, and so she brought us all presents. And I remember she brought Viola and me a Japanese kimono, and I don't know what she brought you guys.
I don't remember her bringing
I can't remember that,
I don't remember.
but she brought Mother a poker and a coal shovel. That was her present. And it lasted all through the years. I don't think it ever wore out, did it?
It was really a good fire shovel.
I've still got it.
That's the one I took the ashes with
I
all
still
those
got that
years.
as a keepsake, that fire shovel.
Did you go on vacations as a family? Did you, what did,
Well,
Camping?
up at Bancroft, since we had people there most of the summer, and there was very few weeks that we didn't even go to Soda Springs. It's a place just out north of the town of Soda where they had this soda water you could practically pick out of a creek there, and have an outing there, or else we went to down from Bancroft to Lava to swim there. And it seemed like most of the summer, some of the families were there, and we did a lot of that.
Dad loved to swim in that. He loved to go to Lava.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons we used to go to the Honeyville Springs so much.
We went
Dad
over.
loved to go to that swimming pool.
We'd get on the milk truck, on the back of the milk truck.
He'd put benches along
Yeah,
for us
we-
to sit on, and it had sides on it enough. But
And the Peterson families would always go with us. And we'd
But
go
we
over
went to UD.
no, it
I
was,
never did go
we
to
didn't go.
UD.
We
with
did
us.
that with Lyle.
You
That must have been the other later years, because we used to go
Judy
to
kind of come on later, I believe.
and we'd go
Where
over
was
there.
Judy?
And,
Out north, it was north of Honeyville, out the straight to,
North of Fielding.
yeah, it was out over by Fielding.
We used to
I-
get on that milk truck. Remember the time when we'd head up over that Marina's Peterson's
Yeah,
farm?
yeah.
And a few times we had to back down the hill. We couldn't make it.
Get us start over again.
what about camping? Did you go camping?
Oh, we used to go up the canyon. and
Up
stay
to Red
the day.
Banks. We'd go to Red Banks and stay a couple or 3 days with the Petersons.
yeah,
Right.
And the Barkers.
Yeah.
The Barkers went with us.
they went
So
to
the adults
later
and the
years.
children all went together.
Yeah. But I still remember.
I don't know why I don't remember camping with the
Well, I
Peters.
think it was after we were married.
I think it was Lyle and I.
Because Lawrence and me went up there a few times. After
I
we were
think that
married.
happened after I moved to Bear Lake.
Well, I think that happened after we was married too, doesn't it? We did that.
But there's one thing I want to tell about Wilma. I'll never forget when they lived in the bedroom there with Max and the twins, and how Wilma put those two kids in the high chair, and she'd fix the cereal or whatever she was feeding, and she'd go just like this, and feed those twins. And I'd say, well, how come you do it like that, Wilma? And she'd say, I don't want one of them bawling while I feed the other. So she'd go just like this, and she had that down to an art, feeding those kids that much. I can still see her doing that.
I remember kind of in a spiritual experience, I think we all had the measles. Was it the measles we had was all in that front room in the
Yes,
dark?
Yes.
And I know I was pretty sick. Whew.
So was I.
I can remember being pretty darn sick. But I remember that they had the elders come. It was Ed's dad, Lorenzo Larson was one, and I don't know who the other
Uncle Mart Rigby, wasn't it?
was. It was it Uncle Mart Rigby?
I think so.
But I remember Ed's dad gave me a blessing, and I can still remember the healing. I can still remember how quickly I responded to that blessing. It was just like an instantaneous healing, and I've never forgotten that.
Well, see, we were in the front bedroom. Viola and me were in that bed in Mother's bedroom, and they came in and gave us a blessing too, and I can't remember who gave.
I don't remember it because I was unconscious for about 5 days.
That Uncle Mart Rigby and Ed's dad came in and gave us a blessing. I remember how that helped us too.
Well, they were the other two members of the bishopric.
Yes,
Sure they were.
yes.
With Dad.
And then it wasn't very long after that, how many days, that Carl Jurgensen came and knocked at our back door and said that James Rigby had just died with the measles. Can you remember that? It was right after we'd all had them. And I'll never forget, they told that we all had red measles, but James Rigby's had gone black, to black measles.
Who's James Rigby?
That's Uncle Sam and Aunt Frances.
That's Dale's brother.
I'll bet Father outside didn't hear it. I feel he comes back to the front door.
How do you like to remember your parents? What were their outstanding characteristics? What do you tell your family about them?
They were both leaders,
And hard workers.
very, very hard,
And
very hard.
they taught you to work, and they taught you to respect. We were taught to respect people and respect things, and I think they had an awful hard life most of their life. I don't think they had a lot, but they made the best out of what they had, and it seemed like us kids felt like, that we had the best. And the thing that I always think back is how we'd be in the front room together. Of course, I know at the time you couldn't afford to heat the whole house. But the thing that I remember back means more to me than anything that we was together. That we were there as a family. We didn't have a lot, we didn't do a lot, but we were together, and that's the thing that meant more to me than any other thing.
I think our mother was about as thrifty a person as you would ever
You bet.
find. She was determined that we were going to be dressed nicely, as nice as anyone else. But we didn't have the money to go buy things so much. But Aunt Arpa and Aunt Lou were both school teachers. They would buy new clothing, and Mother used their cast-offs, which were always very good. And she remade clothes for us, as well as all our cousins,
Yeah.
for the whole family. Mother would work all summer long, getting wardrobes for every one of us and our cousins to go to school.
And I remember when I first came from Bancroft, I've got to brag about this. We went to church, and Mother had made Viola and me these beautiful yellow voile dresses trimmed with blue tape and little bonnets to match. And we went to church, and everybody just raved about those two sweet little girls and how sweet they was dressed. Do you remember that?
Oh, you bet. I remember the dresses. I don't know that I remember being sweet little girls.
I can remember one of Dad's discipline movements with me. I must have been up into the years of high school, and it appears to me that at that time, I don't know why Dad wasn't going to church. I don't know that. But I remember we'd come in from milking, and we were all sitting there in the front room, and Dad had the paper up there reading the paper, and I was kind of laying by the stove, and Dad put the paper down. He said, "It's time for you to get ready to go to church." I said, "I don't believe I'll go today," I said to Dad. And he said, he didn't say nothing for a minute. Then he said, "That's okay," he said. "That's okay." But he said, "The people that don't go to church won't be driving my car this next week," he said. Well, I was up ready to go right away.
That was his way of grounding,
Yeah, that.
like they ground them now.
Yeah, they ground them, but that was what, I remember that just as plain as if it was yesterday.
Yeah, I remember an incident too with me. That way, I was out gallivanting around with some of my older cousins and some of the weren't cousins. And I don't know what we were doing, whether it was like you say with Harold, who was drinking ale, or all the things we were getting into. But I didn't get home till 5 o'clock in the morning. Dad was already out milking, and I snuck upstairs to bed. A minute or two after I'd been in bed, Dad come up and said, "It's time to get up." I couldn't hardly get up, but I had to get up. I went down, "Do you want to eat?" No, I couldn't eat anything. Took me out and we harnessed the horses up, went down to the field, and I sat on the mower all day long. Half the time turned backwards because I was so darn tired and sleepy. He never asked me, "Where have you been?" why didn't you get home, or a thing about it, but that's what he done. And I sit on that mower, and I remember that, sitting on that hot sun that all day when I felt sick.
Well, I think you was with Ora and Alan.
Huh?
You was with Ora and Alan.
I think.
Because I can remember them coming over after to see how you was.
You had to sow a few wild oats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Were you well-behaved children?
Oh, I'll say.
Any of you get in any trouble that had to get out?
Well, I had to take a nickel back at the Will Barker's store once because I went and charged a candy bar. I thought Cora Jenkins could charge a candy bar and it looks good, so why can't I? So I went in and charged the candy bar, and Will Barker just grinned at me. And when I got home and told Mother, boy, she marched me up with a nickel and hurried to tell him I was sorry that I'd done it.
I think, generally speaking, I think that we were a pretty good group of children. I don't think that they had too much trouble with it.
I really kind of believe the unity you talked of, you'd have to give Mother quite a bit of that credit.
You bet.
Right.
You bet.
I really think we'd have to give Mother a lot of that credit. Dad, he stood behind it,
Yeah, I think
but I
Dad's great.
think Mother promoted that unity.
You bet.
Yeah. I think so.
Well, the unity that you saw in the Rigby family was all the brothers and sisters helped with Aunt Percy, and they helped with Uncle Ray, and every one of the family. It's nothing to hear a knock come on the door, and we'd go to the door, and it'd be Uncle Aim or Uncle Dave or one of them saying, "Is Dr. Cooley in?"
Yeah.
And they'd want Mother to come and check Bill Rigby or one of them to see if they had appendicitis or what they had or what they were doing. And there was such a unity in that family. I think that Mother was brought up that way, or at least they'd learned that since their parents died early. And it carried over in our family.
The other day, Bill Rigby told me, he said he went up to the cemetery and he saw some people up there. They had computer paper, all big rolls of computer paper, and they'd go up to these headstones and put a piece of, and then rub on it, you know, and to get the what markings. You know how they do that? Well, he said I went over to talk to him, and it was wanted to know they was working on the William F. Rigby.
Why?
Just a minute.
We better quit. Huh? Well, anyway, just to finish that story, he said this person said, we used to have a person that kept us posted all the time on our genealogy of the Rigby family. And Bill said, I know who that was. He said that was Edith Rigby Cooley. And she said, that's right. And now it was, they didn't, this person said there was no one to do that for them, and so they was here looking for it themselves.
Well, I think we've had a wonderful discussion today. Is there anything else anyone had in their mind they wanted to add? I think we'll stop for now, and let's take a minute and introduce the spouses. Aunt Wilma, and I thought, Aunt Wilma, why don't we tell a little bit about what you remember of Grandpa and Grandma Cooley and about coming into the Cooley family?
The main thing I remember about Grandma is her digging with a shovel out in the yard, keeping all the weeds away.
There wasn't a lawn there?
No, she didn't have a lawn, and she could have had a pretty lawn with a lot less work. But she was really good to all of us, and like you said, she was a good worker.
Did you feel welcome in the family and part of the
Yeah,
family?
she was always good to me, and she was always there for me when I needed her.
Dad and Mother was always saw a lot of Wilma. They were good to her.
And I know all the time, all the years, we never had one crossword.
She's a pretty easy mother-in-law to get
And
along
I
with.
thought that was pretty good.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell about?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. We have Aunt Rita and her husband, Lawrence Cantwell. What do you remember about coming into the Cooley family?
It was 1930 when I first met the Cooleys, and I was going with their daughter that day, And I remember all through the years when we would go over there, and if there was any altercation between us, Grandma would always take my side. Rita would say, oh, we didn't get along too well, we didn't do this, we didn't do that. And her mother would say, now listen here, Rita, I'd like to hear his side of it. And I've always found that out. She was a very fair woman, very congenial, both of them. And they always acted together in anything like that. And they treated you just like you were a king. And there was an old thing that went on through the years, long after we were married. We had children over there. We would go over there and have dinners, usually on Sunday. And we'd go over there for the dinner. And then we would stand and talk until evening, and Grandma would say, oh, I wonder if we should have a little supper before you go. And it was a sort of a joke through the years, and I would respond saying, well, yes, Grandma, we've got to have 2 meals to break even with the gas. And that would always bring a laughter.
Well, I remember that Dad was the one that said to me when I was complaining about Lawrence doing too much fishing and hunting, how clean's your nose?
Okay, is there anything else we want to add?
I think that covers it.
Okay. And then her husband, Uncle Ed Larson.
When we were first married, we stayed in Newton for about a year, and during that year, Ed worked with my dad a lot, and he admired him so much because he was so fast. And worked so hard. He said when they'd pitch hay, Ed would start out and go just as fast as he could, pitching his side of the hay. But before he could finish, Dad would have his side and be around giving him a lift on what he was doing. He just couldn't understand anyone moving as fast as my dad did. And but we did move away. When after we'd been married a year, we moved to Bear Lake and lived there for 5 years. I just wish Ed could tell some of the things that he does remember about the family, because, but he just isn't able at the present time to tell anything about it. He doesn't feel that comfortable.
Well, thank you, Aunt Viola. We have Aunt Sarah and her husband, John Edgell. Tell us, John, how you remember Grandpa and Grandma Cooley.
Well, Grandma Cooley was one of the sweetest, patient people that I've ever known, and I've always told my family about her. I always remembered that just because I had an MS and a BS degree, that she kind of thought that maybe that I had to be special or something, and Sarah would tell me the things that she'd say, and it always tickled me. And I remember Grandpa. I guess how he loved the dog that he had. And I could just see that dog was a real companion to him when he was on the farm, and I could understand what a sweet man he must have been before his accident.
That's good, thank you. Do you want to add anything?
Not much. I was just going to say that, what was I going to say? Something that John mentioned and now I've forgotten. That Mother, it was because Mother was always afraid of John because he was so educated. And she didn't dare have him in her home because he was so educated. He was such a highbrow. If she could only know how common he was.
But Grandma really did respect education, and she had a keen mind herself. She
she did.
very interested in everything. Okay.
John didn't know anything about Dad before his accident. When John came into the family, Dad had had his accident, and Mother was getting sick, so John didn't know them when they were younger.
Okay, now we have Lyle and his wife Donna, who are my parents. Living right next to Grandpa and Grandma Cooley, you have a lot of memories of them. What would you like to tell us about?
Well, when I first came to Newton to teach school, Grandma Cooley was teaching the same boys in primary that I had in my class at school. And so very often she would send a note, would I teach her primary class? And I think possibly that's when I met the Grandma Ann Cooley, is when I went down one day to kind of discuss with her what we were going to teach in that class. And that's when I met Grandma Ann Hazen Cooley. And I just remember her in that bedroom. She was sitting in this rocking chair, and she wore that little cap that covered her head, and she just kind of rocked back and forth. I don't remember anything that was said, but I did get to see her and know who she was. But we did live a good share of our lives side by side, and I don't think that mother and daughter-in-law ever got along any better than we did. I know that there's a lot of things that I attribute that my mother taught me, and yet I've got so many things that Lyle's mother taught me in cooking and doing different things. I'll never forget how supportive she was when Lyle was stake president and we had all those general authorities come, and she would come and help. I always liked her to scrub the steps, because she could do them so much better than I did. And another thing she always did that I liked her to do is to mix. When I'd get the bread ready to mix, she could just get it to shine, and so much better than I did, because I had never done that before. But I do want to say about Grandpa, too, that he respected, he told me so many times what fortunate it was for their family to have me enter the family with my education and all that I had been taught and all. They respected anybody that had graduated and had higher education, and always so appreciative of that, and always treated me like one of the family, and which I've always been. And it was very, very much appreciated by us that when we got out of the service that we didn't have any place to live really, and Grandma wrote and said, there's always room for you in our house. And we lived with them the year after it was a little over a year, I guess, wasn't it? We came home in December, and then they started on the house, and I guess it was a year from that. We must have lived there a year, and then we moved in the new house in August. And so I have real fond memories of both of them.
Mother had come over to Donna and said, I'll trade you work today. I'll trade you a little work. I'll do this for you if you'll do this for me.
I did her hair a lot. I did her shopping a lot.
And not only that, but when Mother got into that genealogy a lot, she'd have Donna do some of her writing and typing for her. I'll do a little work for you today if you could do a little this for me, she'd come and say.
What kind of work would she do for you?
Oh, those kind of things. And I never had to worry, like when we went to General Conference, when you girls were older and could stay by yourselves. I never had to worry because I knew she was close enough that she would keep an eye on that everything went okay. And when I had that near experience with, when I nearly lost my life when I had Marcia, it was her that was so insistent with Lyle. She didn't think he was paying enough attention to me, how bad I was, you know. And finally she came over and she said, Lyle, you get this girl to the hospital. And we did.
I just thought about something else about Dad that was interesting to me. He, while we was running some cement up to Leroy's home, Dad lost a thumb. Do you remember losing that thumb?
I took him to the hospital.
Donna ran him to the hospital and they worked on it, but we stayed and finished with the cement. But I remember when Dad come back from over the hospital, he come up to the house snooping around looking for that thumb. And he found that stub of thumb and he took it and buried it. I've never forgotten that. It was something that quite touched me, the fact that he did that, you know. I remember before I went on my mission, Grandma Ann was there, and I asked her a question about polygamy. What did she think about polygamy? Rita can answer better what she told us. What did she say, Rita?
Well, she spoke. Lyle stood there. I remember him standing there in his overalls, his hands in his pockets, and he says, "What do you know about polygamy? I'm going on the mission," and he says, "I haven't heard too much about it. I'd like to hear about it." Grandma looked up at Lyle and she said, "My boy, I can't say a bad thing about polygamy." She says it taught us to love and it taught us to share. And she says that was very, very important.
Okay.
Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's all.
While you're talking about Grandma Ann, I would like to tell you that when Myrna was here Sunday, I told her we were going to get together and talk about these things. And I said, but of course you wouldn't remember Grandma Hayes and Grandma Cooley, would you? And she said, oh my, yes. I went over to Grandma Cooley's to stay while Grandma Great lived there. And she said, I would go into her room in the morning and she would unwind my hair that was braided, long braids. She would unwind my hair and show me how to brush your hair. You start at the ends and you just gradually go up a little bit higher until it's all done, and then you have no tangles. And she said she would fix her hair, and she said then she'd undo her hair, and she says, and then I'd crawl up on the stool behind her and brush hers.
Oh.
So she has very fond memories of Grandma Great, as she calls her.
Maybe that's why Edith had us had the children call her Grandma Great.
I think so.
She did.
Yeah, she had them call her Grandma Great.
Anyone else got anything they want to add before we...
About the grandmas or the aunts or...
I got something when that's turned off. I don't want to...
I want to thank all of you for sharing your memories today. The brothers and sisters and the spouses, all of you have some wonderful memories, and I think Grandpa and Grandma Cooley would be very pleased with all that we've said today. I want to thank everybody for helping.
Remember that they were about 89 years old, or Dad was about that old, and we'd all taken cards and presents to Mother, and she'd open these cards and she'd say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't read one word. And Dad would say, hand them to me, I'll read them. And she'd hand them to Dad, and he'd read these cards right out loud without glasses or anything. And that was the year before he died, and he was nearly 90 when he died.
Did she start to lose her sight before Grandpa died?
Yeah, she started to lose her sight quite a few years before. I don't remember how many years, do you? But I know that Dad read those cards without glasses or one thing.
Okay, thanks.
And I remember when Mother would give the Relief Society lessons and things, she'd give them to Dad and he'd correct them. You know, she'd give them to him first before she'd take them to Relief Society, and then he'd correct them and tell her what she should change or if she should change something. And they did that for a lot of years. I thought they had a wonderful life. Those last years, Mother would quilt, and Dad would pick out the colors and put them together, and he'd show her, he'd count the blocks and put them in piles. And then she'd put the colors together. Dad would nearly always tell her what colors to put with it. And that way he was satisfied and content, and she'd quilt and made her content.
Oh, that's nice.
Once when Mother had made some pies, and Dad said, oh, these pies are just like my mother used to make. And Mother was so proud. She thought anything that your mother made, it was just really a compliment. And it went on for a while, and then one day Dad said, my mother was the best cook, but there was one thing she could never make, and that was pies. I don't think I've ever heard that, or I've never remembered it.
When we were living in Bancroft, I was quite young, Dad, as we mentioned before, was manager of the ball team, and he played baseball, the or with the Bancroft group first. And Dad looked quite young and was quite trim. And all the young girls went down there to watch him play baseball. And after the game, they came uptown. Those girls were there, and Mother had us kids there in the buggy, and she was getting in to go home, and Dad got in there and took hold of the lines and started to drive the horses. And those girls said, "You don't mean to say that Walt Cooley's married to that old woman and all those kids?"
One little incident about Grandma Cooley. She had her mother-in-law staying with her. This was perhaps 62 or 3 years ago. And there was something wrong with her mother-in-law's ear. She had a bad ear. It was an open sore, and she used to doctor that on a daily basis for at least a year or two while I was there, and I observed that on a daily occurrence.
It was about how Dad and his brothers used to herd pigs out in Alto, and so they was going to have to stay all night there and watch the pigs, and so they planned this party, and they went and bought chocolate bars so that they could have this big party. So they ate the chocolate all night long and drank the gaseous water that was out there. And Dad, they all had the quick steps all night long, I guess, but Dad took the Keeley on chocolate, and never as long until he died did he ever eat chocolate in any way, not even chocolate icing on a cake. So that cured him of chocolate right there when he was a little boy. Is that all you wanted?
34. We went over to Bear Lake to visit Ed and Vi, and they lived there, and we had a little outing the one afternoon, and we went east of Garden City, made a fire, and we had roasted weenies, marshmallows, the whole works. And when we finished, your dad said, "This is the first hot dogs I've ever eaten in my life."